Every day, millions pray for healing, for protection, for miracles. And for centuries, people have asked one simple question: does it work? Not symbolically, not spiritually, but measurably. If prayer can alter outcomes in the real world, then it should be observable, quantifiable, reproducible. But when science took prayer out of the sanctuary and into the lab, the results were not what anyone expected. This isn't about mocking faith. This is about running a test. Because if the divine truly intervenes through prayer, the data should speak for itself. Welcome to the prayer results God can't explain. If prayer affects physical outcomes, then prayed for patients should recover faster, live longer, experience fewer complications than those who aren't prayed for. That's the prayer hypothesis. And like any hypothesis, it can be tested. To make it scientific, 3 things are essential. A. Control group. Patients who are not prayed for. A. Double-blind design. So neither patients nor doctors know who's receiving prayers. And statistical analysis to reveal whether results differ beyond random chance. If God answers prayers, we should see significant effects, especially when thousands pray for healing, with sincerity, devotion, and faith. This question matters because billions of believers rely on intercessory prayer, because massive sums are donated for prayer events, healing ministries, and miracle crusades, because entire industries are built on the promise that prayer changes reality. Claims of medical miracles are broadcast worldwide, from hospital rooms to televised revivals, each one declaring that faith can do what medicine cannot. So the challenge is simple. If we can measure drug effectiveness, why not divine effectiveness? So, scientists did. The idea of testing prayer isn't new. It goes back more than a century. In 1872, an English scientist named Francis Galton became the first to test prayer statistically. He wanted to know if people who were regularly prayed for, kings, queens, bishops, clergy, actually lived longer or healthier lives than ordinary citizens. His logic was simple. If millions prayed for these figures every week, their lives should reflect divine favor. Longer lifespans, fewer tragedies, clear, measurable results. But when Galton ran the numbers, the data told a different story. There was no correlation. The royals didn't live longer. The clergy didn't fare better. The prayers, it seemed, made no measurable difference. The response from theologians was immediate. God cannot be tested. And yet, every prayer request implicitly assumes he can be appealed to, that he listens, that he acts, that he changes outcomes in the real world. As the centuries turned, curiosity didn't fade. By the mid-20th century, hospitals began conducting quiet, small-scale studies. Doctors wanted to know whether intercessory prayer could influence recovery rates. Could it lower blood pressure, speed healing, reduce post-surgery complications? The methods grew more careful, more controlled. And by the 1980s, the question had entered the scientific mainstream. Prayer was no longer just a matter of faith. It had become a field of inquiry. Research teams across the United States and Europe designed double-blind experiments to measure whether divine intervention could be detected through statistics. One believer who joined these efforts put it this way: "We weren't trying to disprove God. We wanted to measure His mercy." The goal wasn't mockery, it was measurement. If miracles happen, science should be able to capture them. If divine love touches the physical world, Its fingerprints should appear in the data. The results would shock even the faithful. The modern era of prayer research began in the 1980s, and it started with a study that made headlines around the world. The Bird Study, San Francisco General Hospital, 1988. Nearly 400 cardiac patients, each one randomly assigned to a group. Some were prayed for by strangers. Others received no prayers at all. Neither the patients nor their doctors knew who was in which group. It was double-blind, pure clinical detachment. After weeks of observation, the results came in. The prayed-for group appeared to have slightly better outcomes, fewer complications, faster recoveries. The difference wasn't large, but it was there. The media exploded. Headlines declared proof that prayer works. For believers, it was validation. For skeptics, it was a challenge. But science demands replication. So other hospitals tried the same experiment, same methods, same structure. And when they did, the miracle disappeared. The follow-up studies showed no advantage for the prayed-for patients. The apparent signal from Bird's data dissolved into noise. When the same methods were applied again, the miracle disappeared. Then came the Mayer-Harris study. 1999. A larger sample, stricter controls, better blinding. If divine intervention was real, this experiment would detect it. But when the data was analyzed, the results were clear. No significant difference. No measurable benefit from prayer. And still, the question refused to die. So scientists raised the stakes. Enter the most ambitious experiment ever conducted on intercessory prayer. The STEP Project, 2006. Led by researchers at Harvard Medical School, with multiple hospitals participating. 1,800 heart surgery patients. 3 carefully designed groups. Group 1, prayed for, and told they were being prayed for. Group 2, prayed for, but not told. Group 3, not prayed for at all. The design was airtight, the faith was sincere, and the expectation was hope. When the results arrived, the numbers stunned everyone. There was no improvement. In recovery, among those who were prayed for, none. The prayers changed, nothing measurable. But what came next was even more surprising. Patients who knew they were being prayed for actually had more complications. Higher rates of arrhythmia, slower recoveries, anxiety, pressure to perform, fear of divine disappointment. It seems even faith can backfire under observation. It wasn't just a null result. It was a reversal. And the shockwaves spread far beyond the medical community. Because this wasn't an isolated anomaly. It was the most rigorous test prayer had ever faced, and it failed. As more studies followed in the years ahead, the pattern became undeniable. When researchers combined decades of data into meta-analyses, pooling results from dozens of independent trials, the picture was the same. A few showed tiny positive effects, but those fell squarely within statistical noise. Random chance. The overwhelming conclusion: no consistent, measurable impact. Across all decades, all hospitals, all variations of method, prayer's measurable success rate remained identical to random chance. There were no patterns, no reproducible miracles, no divine fingerprints in the numbers. The experiments were done, the data was clear, and the results were silence. But data isn't the only contradiction. Theology itself can't explain what the data reveals. If prayer changes outcomes, why do results mirror statistical randomness? This is the core contradiction. Because if divine intervention is real, It should leave a signature, a measurable deviation from chance. But instead, what we see is perfect alignment with probability. No spikes, no patterns, just the same distribution you'd expect from random events. And that raises a haunting question. If God heals one, but not another, when both have identical faith, identical prayers, identical desperation, why? What principle governs that decision? What logic determines who lives and who dies? Answered prayer becomes indistinguishable from coincidence. A moment of healing feels miraculous, until you realize the same outcome occurs in those who never prayed at all. Imagine a simple hypothetical. If 100 cancer patients pray and 10 recover, believers call it proof. But if 100 atheists recover at the same rate, it's called medicine. The logic collapses. Because if God answers some prayers and not others, with no discernible pattern, then the distribution of miracles is indistinguishable from natural randomness. And here's the paradox that devastates the entire concept. A God who answers randomly is statistically identical to one who doesn't answer at all. There is no measurable difference between divine choice and cosmic silence. This is where faith collides with mathematics. Because randomness isn't mystery, it's what happens when there's no signal. Believers often point to powerful stories. The sudden remission, the last-minute rescue, the unexpected survival. But every miracle claim has a twin on the other side. A mother who prayed the same words. A family who begged with equal devotion and still buried their child. For every whispered, "God healed me," there's a silent grave that testifies otherwise. And this is where the silence bias takes hold. Every answered prayer is shouted from rooftops. Every unanswered one dies in silence. We amplify the successes. We bury the failures. And statistics flatten the illusion into what it really is. A mirror of chance. Visualize it. A church full of believers on their knees, hands clasped, eyes closed, voices trembling. Now cut to a hospital ward, machines humming, monitors flashing, empty beds where prayers went unanswered. This isn't the absence of faith. It's the absence of effect. And that difference is everything. When the data fails, theology changes the rules. And over time, believers have built a set of defenses, escape routes designed to protect faith from evidence. Let's examine them, one by one. The first, God's will can't be tested. If that's true, then prayer outcomes are untestable, unfalsifiable, and meaningless as evidence. You can't use answered prayers as proof of God's power, while claiming unanswered ones are exempt from scrutiny. If divine action cannot be tested, then prayer loses any claim to empirical effectiveness. It becomes personal comfort, not measurable cause. The second defense, God answers spiritually, not physically. But if that's the case, then physical healings can't be used as proof either. Every miracle claim becomes anecdotal. Every testimonial collapses into subjective experience. And the moment prayer is confined to the spiritual, it steps outside the realm of measurable reality. That's not faith confirmed by evidence. That's faith protected from Skykert evidence. The third defense, faith matters, not experiments. But the Bible itself presents untestable promises. Ask, and you shall receive. Whatever you ask in my name will be given. Those are measurable claims. They describe a cause and effect relationship between prayer and outcome. And yet, when observation contradicts those promises, we're told It's our fault for asking wrongly, not the claim's fault for failing the test. A theory that can never fail can never be proven true. A claim that contradicts observation fails consistency. The fourth defense. Prayer changes the one who prays. That's psychology, not theology. It shifts the focus from divine intervention to self-regulation. It redefines prayer from communication with a deity to throwaway form of self-therapy. If that's the case, then prayer's power doesn't come from heaven. It comes from the human mind. And believers are measuring calmness, not contact. The final defense. God works in mysterious ways. The ultimate non-explanation, a phrase that halts every question, a sentence that sounds deep, but means nothing, because mystery explains everything, and therefore explains nothing. It's a blanket that covers contradictions, a shield against falsification. When every outcome, good, bad, or random, can be justified as mysterious, the concept of divine action loses all definition. If everything counts as evidence for God, then nothing truly does. Every escape route leads to the same dead end. Either you abandon evidence or you abandon definition. There is no third option. There's a side of this conversation that numbers can't capture. The human side. A mother kneeling beside a hospital bed, her child unconscious, machines humming softly in the dark. Hundreds prayed for that child. Different churches, different cities, all asking for the same miracle. She whispered every night, pleading, promising, believing. But the miracle never came. And when the machines went silent, so did her faith. Another story. A lifelong believer who prayed every morning, for years, for a cure that never arrived. One day, he stopped, not out of anger, out of clarity, because he realized something haunting. The outcomes never changed. Only his expectations did. When promises of divine intervention meet the randomness of reality, it's not just a logical failure, it's a human one. This isn't about mocking hope. It's about protecting people from false guarantees sold as certainty. Because hope is sacred, and when it's exploited, when it's used to sell illusions of control over life and death, it becomes cruelty disguised as comfort. Turn on the television. Watch a preacher promise healing in exchange for donations. Plant your seed of faith, he says, and God will reward you. Meanwhile, in the same hospitals those promises ignore, doctors and nurses fight for every heartbeat, with no claim of divine endorsement. Faith can inspire strength, but when it replaces responsibility, it becomes dangerous. If God chooses silence, the least we can do is not call it proof. Every major study of intercessory prayer finds no consistent, measurable effect. Decades of trials, thousands of patients, millions of prayers, and the numbers remain the same. Flat, silent, indistinguishable from chance. When a claim makes testable predictions, and the predictions fail, the claim fails. That isn't hostility toward faith, it's respect for truth. Because truth is what remains after every comforting illusion collapses. Faith might still hold emotional value. It might bring peace, or focus, or hope. But its promises collapse under empirical light. This isn't about belief versus science. It's about honesty versus contradiction. Belief deserves respect, but truth deserves consistency. And when evidence and belief collide, only one can define reality. The prayer results are in, and they reveal something no sermon can explain. Next, the free will test religion can't survive.